Sound effects play an enormous role in the gameplay experience. Everything from title sequences to menu navigation to general ambience depend on the game giving the player some sort of audible feedback. They help to create a deeper sense of immersion and interactivity, and they enable games to offer a more complete and often more cinematic experience. A game soundtrack is especially important as it needs to function thematically as well as operatively. That is to say, not only does it need to do all those things we mentioned before, but it also needs to coexist with the game's themes and story. It needs to coexist with all the other sound effects in the game. And it has to do these things all without compromising on sound or composition. A given track must not only be enjoyable to hear, it also needs to complement whatever is currently happening on screen. Syphonfilter does a fantastic job of this through the use of an adaptive soundtrack that changes with the flow of gameplay to strengthen the player's sense of immersion. Not unlike a dedicated battle theme often used in a turn-based RPG, all of Syphonfilter's stages have dedicated danger themes for whenever the player gets into an encounter. Unlike a turn-based RPG, rather than interrupting one song for another one, Syphonfilter will simply adapt its ambient theme that plays when the stage starts into its danger theme. Take the very first mission, for example. The stage theme kicks up immediately as the mission briefing loads us into our introductory cutscene. The use of synthetic keyboard and gentle percussion creates a really eerie tone, as the mysterious figures that run the agency you work for outline the details of your upcoming mission. The cutscene plays out and the level loads in, immediately greeting the player with gunfire and explosions as the soundtrack seamlessly shifts from ambience to action without missing a beat. Transitioning quickly back to its ambient theme once the danger has been averted. Every unique stage theme with the exception of boss themes follows this formula. This not only provides an added layer of intensity to enemy encounters, but it also enables the game's soundtrack itself to act as an audible cue to danger. Where other titles may use jarring audio and visual effects to set the stage, the fluid nature of Syphonfilter's composition creates a sense of interconnectivity between the story, the setting, and the action. You know you're in the clear when the song is reverted to a more subdued backing track. The first stage uses a triangle and keyboard with a reverb effect to create its general ambience, while the danger theme has a more prominent bass line, drum line, and also uses synthesized strings to give you a more full and loud sound. The strings in particular help to build up the drama nearing the stage's end, as we're led into another cinematic where a bomb blows up and destroys the subway, leading us into the next level where we have to tour the fiery wreckage. The destroyed subway has an even more subdued theme than the first stage did, relying mainly on a simple bass riff and mild sound effects to cut the silence. Speaking of sound effects, the constant sound of the fire burning in the background actually complements the soundtrack very well at this point, giving the music an overall more full sound without actually having to interfere with the composition. The danger theme, on the other hand, is very intense. You get a heavy drum line and a much stronger emphasis on sound effects and keyboards. These two themes vary a lot more than the first stage's themes did, but they all still collectively function as a group, to the point that the second stage's danger theme is basically a sped up, more intense remix of the first stage's. The mission ends as we encounter Mara Aramov escaping into a still working subway tunnel, where we hear our first boss theme. It's basically just the first stage's danger theme again, only fully realized with a few allusions to upcoming boss themes. The theme does a fine enough job matching the excitement of chasing Mara through an active subway tunnel, but there isn't much else that can be said about it. The next theme, on the other hand, has much more to offer. It begins with a simple hi-hat beat and a wind instrumental that are quickly accompanied by a droning computerized sound effect and synthesized vocals that come together to match the pitter-patter of rain and the wind blowing through the night. The vocals are present mostly to complement the percussion, stopping only occasionally to let out a sigh of relief as if refreshed by the rain. After a while, the instruments within the track will actually begin to echo, mirroring the cold, dark emptiness of the stage as you're running around the rain trying to defuse these viral bombs. The drums crash and boom like thunder as the wind instrumentals drone on longer and longer, as if to say that the rain is only going to get worse from here. Constant crashing cymbals and the repeated sudden strokes of the keyboard mimic the lightning and thunder that split the night, further emphasizing the danger looming up ahead as we make our way to the final viral bomb stashed away at the Freedom Memorial. Here's where we'll start our second encounter, a literal firefight with a masked man named Anton Gurdu wielding a flamethrower. The track leads off with an electric guitar riff that, while simple, brings an intensity that I feel was lacking from the previous theme. There are some sound effects present that help to maintain the whole digital vibe, but the guitar definitely keeps center stage as you're running for your life in this enclosed space from a crazy man with a giant canister of gasoline strapped to his back. There are a few instrumental breaks in between, although they're mostly insignificant and don't do a whole lot for the track other than add just a little bit of variety. Gurdu will eventually go up in flames, ending the stage and kicking off the next mission. We're tasked with trailing a man believed to be a major player in the Syphonfilter conspiracy, leaving us to sneak around armed security detail as we navigate through the museum expo to gather more information. A smooth bass line and accented keystrokes help to maintain a sense of calm ambience as you attempt to make it through the reception area undetected, with both the bass and drum line occasionally kicking up to help build a sense of anxiety. We eventually reach our destination, where we find that the man we've been trailing has indeed been working with the terrorists, as well as a traitorous superior from our own agency. This sudden twist is accompanied by the admittedly weak danger theme for this stage. The theme is definitely intense, especially with its added use of electronic drums and loud, piercing sound effects. But given the amount of time you're going to spend slowly climbing things while being shot at, or sometimes just idling through an animation, more often than not, this intensity will just work against the real-time action currently happening on screen. The next track does the best job of actually representing its stage's theme by far. That theme being military, as our next mission sees us directly infiltrating the enemy base. Unlike previous missions, which all took place in some sort of residential area, the current objective brings us to a military bunker being actively occupied by the enemy. The drums use a marching percussion accompanied by a groovy but still heavy bass line, while echoing computerized sound effects remind the player of the imposing and deadly technology currently surrounding them. The track breaks often, sometimes using only one or two instrumentals to keep the beat going to match the more tense and stealthy nature of the operation. That is until you screw up and set off an alarm that alerts everybody on the base to your presence. The drum line picks up speed as the bass line is overtaken by a loud and striking string instrumental. This track has a lot more going on with it than previous Danger themes, most likely due to the fact that the entire base bunker stage is played under an alert status. This means the player only ever hears the one track on a loop, and giving it more variety means having a lower chance of the player getting bored with it. The action continues to build as you blast your way through the bunker, disarming warheads and bypassing laser barriers on your way to the base tower to disable the enemy's communications radar. We reach the top of the tower only to find that instead of our partner waiting to retrieve us, the enemy has sent a chopper to eliminate us instead, mocking the apparent death of our partner over radio as the boss theme continues to intensify. The chopper boss theme sounds almost identical to the Anton Gurdu boss theme, only more fully instrumentalized. I wouldn't be surprised if Gurdu was meant to initially have an original theme, much like Mara Aramov did, but due to time constraints or whatever other reason just ended up with a stripped down version of this theme. The song is incredibly noisy, using everything from a synthesized choir to a non-stop, fast-paced computerized backbeat, all paired with the buzzing of rotors and blasting of machine guns, to generate a feeling of overwhelming intimidation and drama that quickly turns to hope as the beast begins to smolder and the soundtrack starts to simmer. When the chopper is finally destroyed, we're greeted once again by the stage's danger theme as we make our final escape before the enemy's base is blown to smithereens. Our next mission sends us to Ukraine, where we must find and rescue Jonathan Fagan, the man we were tracking earlier, from his captivity in the enemy stronghold. This stronghold consists of a massive Gothic cathedral and the winding catacombs that lie beneath. Armed men clad in robes walk the halls, guarding the researchers in charge of synthesizing the Syphonfilter virus, as well as the victims currently suffering its effects. The soundtrack establishes a more somber tone here through the use of natural piano chords as opposed to the synthetic keyboards it's been using up until this point, with vocals being used only occasionally to accent the piece. The whole song has a kind of spooky tone to it, especially when you consider all the Syphonfilter victims littering the halls of the cathedral. It's almost like it's their voices calling out to you in the middle of the song. Vocals shift and play a far more prominent role whenever the player is in danger, transitioning from simple accent pieces to fully accompanying the piano or percussion at any given point of the song. The two tracks act in stark contrast to each other. Much like the stage environment itself clashes with the military armaments it now houses, the danger theme immediately destroys any sense of calm that was established by the ambient theme. You'll explore the cathedral and eventually stumble upon the catacombs, where you'll find your target and discover that the partner you thought was dead is actually alive. You and your newly rescued partner shoot your way through the catacombs and make it to the exit just in time to watch Mara Aramov murder Fagan in cold blood. We hitch a ride in Mara's chopper to Fagan's warehouses, where we see a literal war unfolding over control of the Syphonfilter virus. The soundtrack hits hard right out of the gate, with a loud drum and welling instrumentals that let you know that trouble is brewing all around you. You're in the endgame now, you're always in danger, and the soundtrack reflects that very well here. The only notable difference between the ambient track and the danger track here is an upbeat electronic drum pattern that lets you know that you're actively in danger. Other than that, the danger theme simply doesn't take any instrumental breaks. This means that no matter what, even when you're in the clear, you're never really in the clear because trouble can always show up at any time from one side or the other. These same two tracks will be used for the next couple of stages, but in my opinion, the Warehouse 76 stage does the best job of letting the track shine. Just like with the destroyed subway, the sound of the fire raging throughout the environment adds to the ambience of the soundtrack without actually having to alter its composition. This is done even more effectively now than it was before, because we're working with multiple stages that use the same soundtrack, as opposed to the singular stage using the one track and just having the fire be part of it to begin with. This helps the stage maintain a sense of identity despite the fact that it shared a theme with the last two missions. We navigate the burning warehouse and come upon a freight elevator. The elevator shaft goes up in flames as we crash down into the silo access tunnels. The soundtrack explodes as terrorist forces storm forth. A heavy bass line and rapid percussion, accompanied by sharp and sudden instrumental stings, create a heavy climactic tone that establishes both a sense of triumph as well as a sense of fear within the player. You're in the home stretch, but the danger is more real than ever. Minus the identical intro, the danger and ambient themes are actually completely different for this stage. You get more of that same non-stop intensity while you're in an encounter. The rest of the time, you get very calm, spaced-out percussion, long, echoey, drony keyboard strokes, and the occasional, very droopy bass note. The first mission down in the access tunnels is a lot more balanced in terms of exploration and combat, while the second mission will see you sneaking around in the dark, navigating slowly so as not to be detected by the enemy. You'll hear potentially a lot more of the ambient track during the second mission. The track is mostly very simple and repetitive, just looping back the same couple of instrumental sequences like most of the tracks do. However, after a few minutes, once the track is looped a couple of times, the backing track will cease completely, leaving only a singular keyboard stroke with a reverb effect echoing on in the background, almost like you can hear the sounds emitting from the silo at the end of the tunnel. This empty, hollow sound mirrors the emptiness of the cave, a vast and dark environment where the player can die with one wrong step. Even the ambience here is deadly. At the end of the tunnel lies yet another elevator, which finally brings us down into the silo, where we'll find a rocket equipped with a Syphonfilter virus prepped and ready to launch. The soundtrack is very smooth and steady here, especially considering this is the final mission of the game, likely to give players a sense of calm before the storm. We learn that yet another agency head was actually working with the terrorists, only for him to be executed just as quickly by lead terrorist Romer, as the rocket begins to launch and we have to quickly escape into the safe zone. Things pick up and we get more of that same added instrumentation that we've gotten used to. Only this time we're treated to that same electric guitar riff that we get whenever we go into a boss encounter, letting you know that this theme is a little more dangerous than the other ones. This is particularly fitting since we'll fight Romer at the end of the stage as opposed to him getting a dedicated level and theme song. This helps to reiterate the entire point of the soundtrack and why it's composed this way to begin with. Whether it's cinematics, action, or even the final boss fight, the soundtrack never lets up and it allows an entire level to maintain its sense of continuity, sometimes keeping a sense of continuity even between groups of levels. The story ends with us watching one final cinematic that leads us into the end credit roll accompanied by the main title theme for the game. While Syphonfilter's music may not be praised in the same way that Zelda's or Mario's is, its distinct use of multiple concurrent soundtracks functioning as a singular piece of music that can adapt to the action on screen helps to deliver a powerful sense of immersion to the player and is worthy of praise. Regardless of how any given individual may feel about the soundtrack one way or the other, its ability to function as something more than just a backing track and serve as an interactive sound effect to the player cements its place as one of the most memorable soundtracks on the entire PS1 library.